Middle, brilliant. On and not blue tail. I'm not sure. Not sure what angle I'm taking with this one. Our other sponsors this evening are Jardu. So they have sponsored all of our events this year. Jardu are massive supporters of new talent in tech, nurturing that. I work for Jardu. So I've done a lot of work with School of Code boot campers this year, which has been amazing. Jardu, for those of you who don't know, are on a mission to be the world's most digital platform. Making the web accessible to people is absolutely crucial for Jardu. And I think we're doing pretty well on that mission so far. Jardu folks. You guys are way too enthusiastic tonight. Cool. Okay then. So we are looking for speakers, sponsors and bloggers for 2025. Our 2025 events are looking pretty good so far. The next one's going to be probably end of February and it might be a Wednesday. Sorry, but it's just because we've got some great speakers and we're trying to work around dates. So keep your eyes open for that. But please do get in touch if you want to contribute to the Fusion community. We rely on people spreading the word about Fusion. So please, any reviews, any posts that pop up on LinkedIn the day after Fusion, we are so grateful for, because running these events is just wonderful. It's a wonderful experience, and it's well worth all the stress that happens before. So any reviews, any kind of people saying that we've done a good job, please use hashtag or feel free to share anything on LinkedIn. That would be amazing. It wouldn't be Fusion without doing a shout out to our amazing partners. Here we are up here. We'll hear from a few of those tonight. We've got Stuart Language, Cryogenics, and I'm going to give you a little update on School of Code as well in a second. And also, these are our kind of unsung heroes of the Birmingham tech community. This is what I'm going to say. This is a big claim. But without all of these meetups, we wouldn't have anything here in Birmingham. So keep an eye out for events that are going to go on over the next kind of 12 months. We'll try and promote them as much as we can at Fusion. So on to upcoming events. We are obviously getting to the end of the year, so everyone's thinking about Christmas and winding down a little bit. But the Women in Tech group have their next Tech Talk session, which is at BJSS. They've got Poonam Rajput, who's going to be talking with them on that, why the tech industry would be nothing without me. Sounds a bit big-headed. But it's worth going to. It's going to be a great talk. It's all about diversity. It's all about women in tech, which is something that we should really fully support. Next, we've got OWASP. This is going to be at Hayes offices on the 5th of December. 2 speakers have been announced. All the details are on the Meetup page. Dave Archer and James Holland, who's our Fusion friend. There you are. Okay, and finally, we've got the Birmingham.net user group. So Dave and Ryan are running that event on December the 11th, again at BJSS, massive supporters of the Birmingham tech community. And you can sign up now on Meetup. Just wait, some of the cameras are down. We're all good? Good to go. And finally, I'm going to do a bit of a shout out. I saw a post from Code Bar last night. And for those of you that don't know what Code Bar is, it's a not-for-profit. I don't know how well funded it is, which is why we're posting this here today. Code Bar creates a safe and welcoming space for creating opportunity for diversity in tech. So people who wouldn't necessarily get opportunities to come and basically sit with some amazing mentors. I'm not going to name him again because it will become the Ryan show. But it's incredible, and people are taking time out of their evenings to sit and support people new to tech, to kind of build their knowledge and build that skills gap as well. This QR code will lead you to a donations page. Now, they're not asking for thousands and hundreds. This is individual donations of £10, £20, whatever you can afford. So I'm just going to ask very nicely, as it's nearly Christmas, I know that it's November, but if you can just just grab the QR code, take a look at it, and if it is something that you're keen and happy to support, that would be amazing, and your donations would be very, very welcome. Just going to stand here for a second. Okay. Wonderful. Finally, School of Code. So we've got some School of Coders in the house. Where are you? Oh, wow. Yeah. There they are. So School of Code are now at a certain part of their boot camp where they are looking for businesses to provide challenges. So this could be any challenge that you're facing within your current businesses, within your current teams, and that's a challenge that's set for the boot campers so they can complete a virtual hackathon. I have attended the demo day. Was that online demo day? Yeah. Thanks, Avida. The online demo day where they presented, what they've built after having these challenges from some employers, and it was absolutely brilliant. It was a really interactive session afterwards, so just bear that in mind. And if you'd like to be a part of that, just drop the partnerships at School of Code a message. Yes, that is it for me. For the time being. Oh, I've got to do a tech thing now, haven't I? Okay, bear with. So our first speaker this evening, Joe Rowe from Monzo. I know that we've already had him here. He posted an incredible blog not long back on LinkedIn. He's a remote speaker, so we're going to do some really, really jazzy stuff right now. I never know why I'm the person to do this. Why is it me? This is terrible. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay? I've got no idea. Before I could see the room from the back, so I've been like peeping at everyone, but now I can't see a thing. All good? All bad? I can hear like clicking of a mouse, if that helps. I would just wait to get confirmation that like you can see and hear me before I start. Oh, okay. So someone in the chat, so you can see here on YouTube. I don't know if I think that means I should start. Okay, I'm live. Lovely. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. So I'm going to try and get to this quite quickly because I want to give time for all the other speakers that we've got lined up. But I'm going to talk to you about making Monzo magic and how it influenced the way that we handle cron jobs. So this is me. Hello, nice to meet you. So nice named, not twice, but twice adjacent. And I'm an engineer at Monzo. For anyone who doesn't know, Monzo is an app-based bank in the UK. So what are we going to talk about today? First of all, I'm going to cover what is Monzo Magic. Then I'm going to talk about the history of cron jobs at Monzo. I probably have to explain how those two things are in any way related. And at the end, I'm going to share some takeaways. So first of all, what is Monzo Magic? So this is from our writing principles, and it's about how we communicate with customers. So we transform the mundane with moments of unexpected delight, celebrate and commiserate, draw on universal experiences to connect with people, and we always look for ways to inject a little bit of magic into the customer experience. And this is equally true internally and culturally within engineering at Monzo. We're always looking for ways to inject that little bit of delight and to connect with one another. So an example of this where customers see it is with our Get Paid Early feature. When you select Get Paid Early, you can get a backs payment a day before it's due. And if it's due on there's a bank holiday involved, it can actually be a few days before, which is really nice. But when you get the money, you kind of pull this note down into your wallet, your phone vibrates, confetti shoots out across the screen, and you get a little cha-ching noise. And on Halloween, you drag a candy into a pumpkin. Now, we could have just given you a button to press that says get paid, right? The outcome would be the same, but there's this delightful little experience that's part of it. And this is quite interesting because we also have the same sort of concept in our backend. So we have a CLI that we use for all sorts of things, shipping code, that sort of stuff. And it's got a little ASCII Monzo logo in it. And it's got little seasonal emojis after the prompt that now we have a little leaf because it's autumn, soon it will be a little snowflake, just little touches like this. We also have fake users. So when you're testing and you create a fake user, this one's called Bulbasaur. And they also have all of the engineers at Monzo's first and last names, and they get randomly chosen. So sometimes you create a new user and they're called Bulbasaur Row. Right? There's no reason this couldn't have just been John Smith, right? Or Jane Smith, or user 1, user 2. But there's just something a little bit nicer about it being something fun and a little bit of this sprinkling of magic. And we also have plushies that are the most magical thing possible. This one's wearing a bow tie because it went to an award ceremony. So there's no reason for us to have this plushie, right? But it exists. And it got me thinking, where else do we see these sorts of things? So one example is Easter eggs in games. So this one, some of you may recognize from GTA San Andreas, where if you go and get the jetpack from the desert and you fly all the way to San Fierro, go to the top of the bridge, you see this message just to say there's no Easter egg. So someone spent time putting that there. But why? It's completely pointless. They could have saved the engineering effort and saved that, paying that person to do that and just not do it. But it's there. And we see this in other examples in media too. So sometimes it's just Easter egg after Easter egg after Easter egg, right? And this really resonates with audiences. People really like this. So you have to ask yourself, why bother sprinkling magic around? So the first example I think of, or the first answer, is it fosters a sense of belonging and engagement. It explicitly tells you that someone built this with you in mind, that you were their focus. And it gives a strong belonging cue that you are part of a team, people care about your experience. And that's the message we want to give to customers, but it's also the message that you get internally within engineering. The second example is it boosts morale and positivity. So someone wanted you to see this, they wanted you to have this little bit of delight, they wanted to give you that experience. And it creates these shared moments for colleagues. It says, we're all part of the same thing. My third example is that it promotes curiosity and creativity. So it really reinforces that the things you build are going to be used by someone. And it communicates quite clearly that you're part of an environment that values that creativity and collaboration. And this maps really, really nicely to one of our core values, which is think customer first. So whether that's the bank customer that we're thinking about when we're building a feature like Get Paid Early and giving them a little bit of delight, or whether the customer is actually one of your colleagues and another engineer, we're putting them to the front of our mind and we're saying, I built this for you with care, right? And these little kind of Easter eggs and little sprinklings of magic communicate that. So that's magic covered, right? Now let me cover cron jobs. So before I talk about cron jobs at Monzo, I need to give you a little insight into our platform. So we use a shared platform. It runs on Kubernetes, on AWS across a bunch of availability zones. And the little boxes to the left edge of Kubernetes are our microservices. So we've got over 2,500 microservices. And there's like one for Monzo Flex, there's one for our account service, there's one for our pot service. And these expose endpoints that we call via RPC to trigger something to happen. And sometimes that can be an interactive request, like a customer has done something on their app and that's being served by the back end. But other times it can be non-interactive and it's just something that happens on an automated regular schedule. And that's a cron job. And we've had a few different iterations of how we support cron jobs over the years. So the first one is long-lived containers. And no tech talk is complete without a ChatGPT generated illustration. So here it is. This is a long-lived container. And it is quite good because this little guy just sits there just waiting 24/7 until someone makes an RPC that it will then handle. And that means if it gets an RPC like once a week, it spends all the rest of the time for that week just waiting. So it means the pod has to get scheduled, it gets shuffled around if things get rebalanced, it reserves some like CPU or memory. And it's not like the worst thing in the world. There's not a huge amount of overhead, but it is pretty wasteful. So following on from that, the next iteration was Kubernetes cron jobs. So Kubernetes cron jobs don't run 24/7. You define them, they will spin up, deploy it, schedule a container, get running, do their job, and then power down again. So it's a lot better than a long-lived container. But there are a few kind of drawbacks to it. So one of them is like they're defined in YAML, which is fine, but it's not the most expressive or kind of easy to use language. The second is the schedules are defined in a cron tab format. So I have a little quiz for you. Here's a cron tab. What does this cron tab represent? I'm going to give you 10 seconds to think about it. If you said every Monday at 7:30, you're correct. And if you didn't say that, if you said, I don't know, like you can probably look at the cron tab and look at the answer and piece it together, right? The 30 is probably the minutes, the 7 is the hours, two things in the middle, I don't know. And then a 1, oh, that's probably the Monday, right? So you think, okay, fine, there are some rules. So once I know them, I could probably read and understand these. So let's put it to the test. Here's the next one for you. And this time, I'm not going to give you 10 seconds. I'm going to save you like the nosebleed from trying to figure this one out. The rule this expresses is every 13 minutes past 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. on every third of the month between the 10th and the 20th, but only if they're weekdays. And this is a really, really, really contrived example because this is just a confusing requirement, right? You're never going to actually write a cron that needs to run on that schedule. But even so, like that syntax doesn't help you, right? So Kubernetes cron jobs are also, the deployments of them are quite opaque. You don't really know what's going on. You don't know if your cron is now like, when the schedule comes around, is that going to spin up and do the thing? Did something go wrong? You might have to go check logs or like jump into containers and look at things. So it doesn't really give you a great amount of visibility on what's going on. And it also has limited configuration options. You kind of get what you get and it doesn't scale beyond that. So we wondered, could we do better, right? Could we design something that works a bit better for us? And that leads us to the third version of cron jobs at Monzo. This is imaginatively called crons v3, or cronfig is the other name we have for it. So when we built this, we designed it with magic in mind. I talked earlier about like the little emojis you see around and the little fun things. That means that we're always thinking about our users. We're thinking about the person that's going to actually interact with this thing. And they're really front of mind in what we're building. So we want to make crons easy and intuitive to declare. We want to give service owners loads of control over how their crons behave. And we want to make crons super easy to manage and maintain going forward. So I'll jump into these 3 points and we'll look at some examples. The first one is we wanted to make them easy and intuitive to declare. So we went from this, the YAML version, to this. We choose to let engineers define their crons in Go. It's the same language we use for everything else. And notice we get some type safety here. We get some reusable types, like the request is a request type that's in our backend system anyway. When you make that request, the stooge service will just respond with a 200. And it's not comparing apples to apples, but you get the idea, right? The one on the right is going to be a lot easier for you to write. But we can even make it even easier for you to write with IDE hints. So if you hover over one of those fields, it will tell you, the cron name is an identifier. It's unique within the service. You don't need to give it the service name. We can just serve that up really easily without someone having to go and find documentation or try to figure out what they're meant to be putting in here. We also get validation. We can make sure when you define a cron, before you raise your PR, you will be told if something is wrong with it. We won't kind of deploy it, let it break, and then you have to come fix it. We can do all of that up front. So we can check if it matches the name we expect. We can do things like if you express a timeout, that cannot be negative. And if you provide a time zone, we'll try to load it. And if it fails to load, we can tell you that's not a valid time zone. So we get loads and loads of help we can offer our users. We can also give them sensible defaults. So you don't have to go and express an option for everything. We can just let you choose the ones you want. So our default timeout is 1 minute. Our default execution window is 5 minutes. Retries are on by default. And we can actually override your defaults depending on other pieces of information about the cron you've defined. So if you haven't provided failure semantics and your cron is like a once per duration cron, we can give you a custom execution window that matches something to do with the duration that you're using. So we get to do this on behalf of our users. They don't have to think about it unless they want to think about it or they need to think about it. So the first thing we wanted to do, make crons easy and intuitive to declare. What could be more intuitive or easy than just clicking around in your IDE? The next thing we wanted to do was to give service owners lots of control over how their crons behave. So I kind of touched on this in the previous examples. We've got failure semantics where you can provide a timeout, an execution window. You can define whether your cron should page you if it fails. You can even provide a runbook URL or things like set a monitor acknowledgement, which is where when your cron starts, it says to another service, I've just started, someone should acknowledge me. And if you don't get acknowledged within some time frame, it goes and alerts you that, hey, this cron started, but no one told me it finished. So we give users all of these options. We give them even more options. Here's some options you can have in a schedule. Notice you can add things like jitter if you don't want it to run on a very predictable schedule, or you can set like when it should be paused until. And here's an example of a cron. So we want to maintain readability, right? So let's look at how this builds up over time. First, it's very simple. Just once every 2 hours, it's going to fire. Then we can give it an RPC timeout, an execution window. And notice this is just defined in Go. You come along, pick your options. Just looking at it for the first time ever, you can get it, even if it's quite complicated. So this example, we're letting you express an override on one environment compared to another. And I don't really need to explain what that override is. It kind of expresses itself just in the code. And here's another example where we're adding jitter to this cron. Again, it's going to run once every 10 minutes. You can see there's jitter. I just get that by looking at it. So I'm going to go back now to cron tabs. All right, so get your thinking caps on. Here is a cron tab. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to see if you can figure out what this one means. It's very similar to one of the first ones. So if you said this means every Monday at 1900 hours, you are incorrect. It does not mean that. It quite clearly means every Monday at 11 a.m. in Los Angeles. So the cron cannot express that. Those two things are the same, but the cron can't tell you that. So how do you deal with time zone changes when all you've got is a cron tab? Now remember, get paid early. That happens at 4 p.m. every day. Whether we're in Greenwich Mean Time or British Summertime, it's 4 p.m. But cron tab expressions run on UTC. So how do you have a cron that runs at 4 p.m. in your time zone if you can't express the time zone? We needed a solution for that. And one of the ones that we encountered was this, 2 crons. So you have a GMT cron and a BST cron. The GMT one is at 1600. The BST one is at 1500, which is 1600 BST. And for half of the year, the GMT one fires. It says, is it GMT? Yep, I'll do something. And your BST one doesn't. And the other half of the year, the opposite happens. So this is how we can kind of have a cron that always runs at 4 o'clock, regardless of time zone. But surely there's a more elegant solution to that. And here it is. I touched on this before, the validation, but in your schedule, you can say this should run every Monday at 11 a.m. in America, in Los Angeles. And this is really, really expressive, right? We wanted to give service owners lots of control over how their crons behave. This allowed us to do that. And the third one is that we wanted to make crons super easy to manage and maintain. So for this one, I want to talk a little bit about what our system that actually manages these crons looks like. So here are some of the moving parts of that system. You see it starts at the deployment service that performs CRUD operations on crons. We then have a cron service that deals with scheduling. That will go out and talk to various other services to make requests depending on what the cron is configured to do. And it will also go to our squad inbox service to send notifications to other teams. And an important thing to see here is that this starts with deployment. We've bound our cron deployments to regular service deployments. And a really nice property of that is that if we add new options or new sensible defaults, crons just inherit them the next time their service deploys. We don't have to go out to cron owners and say to them, hey, we've just changed the way crons behave. Can you please deploy your service so that your crons get refreshed? This will just happen organically. And we can let that happen organically because we deploy quite a lot at Monzo. The other bit to see here is like our cron service is responsible for the scheduling. Now that comes with its own set of challenges, like how do we know if we've actually registered a cron for every cron that should exist? And likewise, how do we know if someone has deleted a cron from their service? How do I know that's not still running actually? And like, has it really been deleted from the cron service? Because our cron service can make requests to other services, we also have to think about some really important edge cases, like how do we guarantee the payload that's going to be sent to the downstream service hasn't been compromised since that cron was created, and it's now not going to do something nefarious? Now, those things could be talks in themselves. So the bit I'm going to focus on is the user experience part. I'm going to talk about how we communicate to our teams. And to do that, we use our squad inbox service. So at Monzo, we're incredibly collaborative. And when we build things, we want to be able to broadcast information to users. We don't want them to have to come and check logs or dashboards or get a generic alert. So we've got a mechanism to say, here's a message I want to send to whichever team owned this service, and that message will just end up in the correct Slack channel. And we use this in our crons v3 system. So here's some examples of Slack messages. This one is one of the messages we send when you get a cron created for the first time. So previously, you didn't know if your cron had been created. You just kind of hoped it would, unless you go in and do all the legwork to definitely check it yourself. But look, we give you a human readable execution date and a nice little Pingu icon. And why a Pingu icon for crons? I just like that icon on Slack. It's actually a GIF and the beak like squeaks and stuff. But by seeing that, you get this idea the person who made this wanted you to enjoy the thing that you're now using. But also the thing that you're getting this message is really useful. Here's another message where a cron has been deleted. So imagine you're just doing your work, you suddenly get this come through, you immediately know, well, why is that cron should have been deleted? And you can jump in and fix it. You get messages when a cron gets updated. If you know the jitter change, it'll tell you what piece of the cron has changed. And we can also encourage good behavior. So this cron didn't have a runbook URL. And when it fails, we can say to the team, hey, by the way, if you set a runbook here, we can link that to you next time. And if they go and do it, when the next time the cron fails, they will get a runbook in the message telling them it failed. So the loop between something's gone wrong and what do I do is instantly fixed just because we've provided this mechanism. And you can also get some CLI tooling, right? So this one, I can list the crons for a service. Notice there's that little autumnal leaf. I can also list in more detail a cron for a service. And get like all of the detail about it. You might notice that leaf there is falling, right? Whereas before it was like a nice, bright, happy leaf. The reason is because I actually goofed when I was doing the command because I put the name in wrong. So I get a little unhappy falling leaf. It's just things like this, right? There's no reason to do that, but it just drip feeds that cue that like someone cared when they built this thing. And this mindset permeates the things we build. It influences them, and it's worth promoting and encouraging. I'll come back to that. But we wanted to make cron super easy to manage and maintain. We will tell you everything that's going on with it. We'll take all of the deployment out of your hands and just make it easy. So we designed with magic in mind. We wanted to make crons easy and intuitive. We just defined them in Go, similar to everything else. We wanted to give service owners loads of control. So we offer failure semantics, retry policies, loads of config options. And we wanted to make them easy to manage. We just Slack you when crons are created, changed, deleted, serve you a runbook, help you kind of manage them. So the things like the emojis, the Pingu, the fun messaging, that doesn't make this system valuable or successful. They're not part of the technical solution that we've built for this problem, but they're part of a much larger ecosystem. And notice here that all of the wants on this slide are rooted in things we want for our customers, not things we want from an operational perspective. So that magic sprinkled around everywhere promotes that way of thinking. And that leads me to my takeaways. So my top takeaways are: one, chippy tea, it's brilliant. You can't beat it. Pizza is, I have got actual takeaways. So this talk was called Making Monzo Magic and How It Influenced the Way We Handle crons, right? And as I mentioned, the emojis, the pingus, they don't influence the technical decisions, but they underpin the solution that we built. And they're part of the environment and the engineering culture that leads to us wanting to build these things to begin with. They're a very subtle reflection of the fact that we have a strong focus on our end user and what their need is. Like, if you care about how the text is rendered and what the user experience is like, how can you not care about the much, much more important aspects like the security and the availability of the system? So my takeaways are: number one, think customer first. We designed this from the interface out, always thinking about what's going to be the best outcome for our users. Second one is be playful and inspire creativity. If you enjoy the thing that you build and it shows, it reinforces that sense of belonging and that shared experience. It kind of says, you know, come and join me. You can build something as well. It's why we have hackathons. And don't underestimate magic is my third takeaway. So light sprinkles of magic on a UX or an Easter egg here or there, it's not for nothing. It does have a strong cumulative effect. It drip feeds those belonging cues to your colleagues or your customers, and it explicitly endorses and advertises creativity. And the last one, think customer first again, right? It's worth repeating. So we're really proud of the solution that we've built, and at its core, the focus was on the user experience and how to make this work the best it could for the users, not on cost savings or performance enhancements. So all of the other takeaways for this particular project would be really specific to the thing we built and the problem we were solving, right? And unless you are designing a solution for in-house management of cron jobs, they're not going to apply to you. But these ones apply to absolutely everything. That is my last slide. Thank you very much. I have to stand awkwardly now because I don't know how it stops broadcasting me. So I found out my mic was off the whole time. Am I still on the screen? Oh.
Have I been muted again? Oh.
It looks, you're looking at me with the microphone. It looks like you're talking to me, but I can't hear anything.
It's Joe.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Oh, hi, Joe.
Hello. It's like The Apprentice. I'm like when Alan Sugar comes.
So we're just going to take, has anyone got any? We are with it. Anyone got any questions? Oh, I need to put my glasses on. Okay. I don't know who was it? Did someone put their hand up? Yes.
Hello. First of all, great talk. Second of all, okay, good. You can hear me. Great. So, second of all, I suppose, do you intentionally make any internal tools open source or free so that you have an external customer to be responsible to, or is it entirely a like? Is there any factor in making it that someone else might be interested in this, so we'll make this as good as possible?
Yeah, no, so for these ones, we don't have like external offerings for these sorts of tools that kind of drive our like thinking customer first. But it's just this idea that if you are like authentically thinking customer first, you really care about it. Like it doesn't matter if your customer is external or internal. Like you care just as much and want them to have just as good an experience. I guess internally it's quite nice because the bar is a bit lower. Like you don't have to really like make sure absolutely this isn't going to go wrong. Your internal customers are more forgiving, so you do just have a nice, like more relaxed time with it. But yeah, no, these don't go to outside customers. I guess the app is the example where you have an external customer that you really care about.
Yeah, great talk. And so, is that working?
Yep. Hello.
Hello. Oh, okay, we're fine. So yeah, the magic and the playfulness, yeah, really love that. How do you get management to buy into that being okay, right?
Yeah, I can't really answer that one because it's just been there since I joined. But I think probably I would say like, so it's not so much that you get the at Monzo like management buy into it, but just that it's already like the context. Like, why would you buy out of it when you see everything working and people having a great time? You kind of don't want to come in and tell everyone to get serious, like, you know, stop messing about. Yeah, it's really difficult in an environment where it wasn't as like explicitly endorsed. I think when you see the benefit of like having that kind of magic sprinkled around, it makes the case for itself.
For Joe? No, good to go. Oh, thank you. You're my eyes when I haven't got my glasses on. Thank you. This echo is so creepy, isn't it? Is it you? Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. If someone builds an internal tool and then doesn't put any magic in, do you get them to go back and do it, or do you sort of roll your eyes and go, all right, Captain Boring, fine?
I don't know. I don't really see any that don't have magic. I suppose actually, when there's an internal tool without any magic in it, it will be one that does not have like an end user that interacts directly with it. So where we're like moving mountains in the background, or like all the stuff that happens inside our cron system, from like the deployment service to registering them, like creating your schedules, making sure that happens on time. That's all very serious, and it doesn't have like fun Pingu emojis sprinkled all over it. But like customers, the internal customers don't see any of that anyway, so you kind of don't mind. I think most of the tools we offer come within the CLI, so they're already baked into an environment that's got a little bit of playfulness around it. I will start rejecting
Cool.
PRs though.
I can't do any more questions. Joe. Oh God. Joe, can
Hello.
people? Joe,
You look like I'm looking at you like this.
Can people contact you anywhere?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and I've done some blogs on the Monzo website, so you can look there. But mostly, you could just DM me on LinkedIn. It's fine, or connect. Or connect on LinkedIn.
Yes, connect. Oh, that's weird. Okay, thanks, Joe.
No worries.
Bye.
Cheers, everyone. Bye bye.
Joe. Love Joe. Okay, so on to our next speaker. A Fusion legend, actually. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say we're full of them tonight. This person was a speaker in our speaker lineup at the very first Fusion in April 2014. Yeah. It's a long time ago. We're old. So I'm going to bring him on stage. Mark Goodwin.
See if we can get this working. So I'm going to present first, haven't I? Computers, how do they work? Share that screen. Did that work for people that can see this stream? Okay. And then hopefully, nope, that's the wrong screen. There we go. So, I'm Mark Goodwin. As Hannah's already said, I'm old. And I'm going to talk to you this evening about what your browser can teach you about software security. And to give you a bit of context, I'm a security engineer. I've spent the last years of my career either building or breaking security features in some of the products that you use. I spent 9 of those years working on browsers and web standards and things like that. And so there's a probability of close to 1 that you've used something that I've done. And I want to start with a horror story. Ooh, it's snowy outside, we've got the atmosphere and everything. It's a really, really short horror story. In fact, it's 1 sentence. And as you can see from the style, it's ripped straight from the Wikipedia entry on the same origin policy. And it goes like this. The concept of the same origin policy was introduced by Netscape Navigator in 1995, shortly after the introduction of JavaScript in Netscape 2. Why is that a horror story? Because the mechanisms that the web uses to protect origins from each other arrived after the ability arrived to allow you to do mischief with them. Okay, so the same origin policy, that's what the web relies on to stop origins from influencing each other. And yeah, it was an afterthought. And it's a horror story, but it's a horror story we're familiar with, right? Please put your hand up if you've never worked on a project where the security implications were thought of after implementation work had been done. Yeah, none of you have done that. We've all worked on projects where people have done work and then realised security stuff. But it's also a story that can give us a little bit of hope. And why can it give us some hope? Because actually, browsers have come a long, long way since 1995. And chances are you use a browser today, right? Put your hand up if you don't. No, you all use browsers. Chances are you use browsers for fairly important stuff, right? Maybe your banking, perhaps you use Monzo. Maybe you use dating sites. Maybe you use social media. Maybe you use NHS for all sorts of health things and all that sort of stuff. So we use browsers for all sorts of stuff, and it's safe to use them because they're pretty secure. And I can't see my presenter notes, which is making me sad. Yeah, who needs notes? It's fine. Okay, so before we take this any further, I want to imagine that you've been tasked with building an application that does what a browser does, okay? So first things first, it's going to be written in C or C++ because those are the technologies that people used when they were first building web browsers. And it's got to load non-trivial data across the internet from sources that you don't trust. And it's got to handle all different sorts of media. It's got to handle fonts, it's got to handle images, it's got to be able to display 3D scenes. It's got to be able to look after multiple different security contexts, so they all have to be completely mutually exclusive. And by the way, it's got to execute arbitrary code by design, right? Anyone fancy doing that? It's a really hard problem. And I'd suggest that it's possibly even such a hard problem that many of the people who were working on this stuff back in the 90s didn't actually realize the full horror of what it is that they were letting themselves in for, right? And whilst that's a difficult task, and whilst there was a particularly inauspicious start, you know, browsers have come a long way. As I've mentioned already, we're able to use them with confidence for some really, really important things. And not only that, but in solving a lot of the problems that browsers have solved, they've helped the rest of us in all sorts of different ways. Okay, I want you to put your hands up if you've ever used a bug bounty program. I want you to put your hands up if you've ever used SSL or TLS. I want to put your hands up if you've ever used WASM or maybe a safe systems language. Yeah? I think, put your hands up if you haven't put your hands up yet. No, everybody's put their hands up. Right, all of those things, there's always one joke, isn't there? All of these things are things that we can thank browser vendors for. Pretty much everything in that list is an innovation that came from a browser. Even things like sandboxing and commodity systems, right? Something we really, really take for granted today. That's something we can thank a browser for. Okay. This isn't working. There we go, that is working. So the plan for the next few minutes then is we're going to go on a little bit of the journey from the sort of our horror show at the beginning to where we are today. I'm going to pick a couple of lessons that we can use when we're building the systems that we work on today. And the first lesson I want to think about is how the problems that you're faced with can inform how you solve problems. Okay, so a lot of my perspective on how browser security has developed comes from working on one of the products you've got on the screen here. And one of the really interesting things is that at the time that these browsers were developing the security architectures they have today, they had some really, really different constraints, and that gave them some really, really different opportunities in solving some of those constraints. So around sort of 2007, Chrome appeared, and the people who worked on Firefox had to deal with no longer being the cool kids. And this new thing arrived that had a newer code base. There was a new product with a new set of users that didn't have constraints over how they used that product or what things that they were going to do with it, right? Whereas the people who were working on Firefox had a code base which predated the Firefox product. A lot of the components that were the foundation on which Firefox was built originated in Netscape back in the day. A lot of that code was old. People had come to use the browser and loved particular things that it did and were very resistant to change. They had big collections of things like add-ons that they really, really liked. And they were understandably not too happy if people came along and said, well, we're going to have to do some things a little bit differently, right? And it meant that when the engineers who were working on Chromium were building their browser, they had a lot of opportunities for securing that were not available to the folks working on Firefox. So to give you some examples, it was really, really trivially easy for folks working in Chromium to introduce sandboxing technology, right? It was really easy for them to introduce process isolation. And that meant that they could isolate sites in different origins in ways that weren't possible in other existing technologies. Whereas if you were working on one of the other browser code bases, perhaps you're working on Safari, perhaps you're working on Internet Explorer, perhaps you're working on Firefox, you're starting from a position where none of these things are architectural features of the things that you're using, and your users aren't going to like it if you start pulling things out from underneath them. And it meant that other browser vendors had to be creative about how they introduce things. So whereas you get sandboxing and process isolation really easily if you're building something from scratch, people that were working on Firefox, for example, could already rely on having a safe language for the front end because the entire browser front end was written in JavaScript. And then they could say, well, actually, maybe we can start extending this down into the foundation of the browser as well and start replacing some of the C++ code with Rust. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we've reached a stage now where, because as time goes by, some of those opportunities level out, actually, broadly speaking, the architecture of these things are the same. And this brings us to our first lesson, right? The constraints that you have mean that you might be presented with different opportunities to other people in how to improve the product that you're working on. But you can make incremental changes, and over time, even if you start off a little bit behind in a particular area, you can start to close that gap. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to talk about is sandboxing technology. Now, I'm not actually going to go into much detail on how these things work, but the takeaway really on sandboxing for me is that sandboxing technology is the biggest security innovation in browser security ever, right? It's really, really huge leap forward in being able to secure the browser. But the real lesson in sandboxing doesn't come from how it works. The how it works is fascinating, right? I mean, you know, loosely speaking, you've got these two different layers of sandboxing. The top one deals with making sure that you're using your basic operating system primitives to isolate the browser from other stuff. So for things like user accounts and file permissions and that sort of stuff. And the second level is about making sure that you isolate as much of the kernel attack surface as possible, right? And that's really cool, it's clever. They work in different ways on different operating systems, and you get an equivalent level of safety across the board, and that's really cool. But the really, really important thing is not in how they work, impressive though that is, it's in where the boundaries go, right? And there's this thing in, this is really not working. There's this concept in browser security, and it's written about in the Chromium security docs, called the rule of two, okay? And the rule of two says, given the Venn diagram you have on the screen, you've got three things, right? You've got untrustworthy inputs, you've got unsafe languages, and you've got high privilege, right? Untrustworthy inputs, well, what does a web browser do? It loads untrusted stuff from across the internet, and a lot of it's really complex, so that's a given. The browser, as I've mentioned already, historically it's written in C and C++, so that's a given. High privilege, well, what's that? Well, that's all the stuff that you want to protect. That's your stuff on your local machine, the capabilities of your operating system, it's the information assets you're looking after, it's the sensitive stuff in websites, your passwords, all of that sort of thing. And the danger comes when you're mixing all of these things, right? There's doom in the middle, but as I've said, the browser does that already, that's a given. So how do you deal with that? Well, what you do is you separate the different things. You separate the untrustworthy input and the stuff that deals with that from the high privilege, the things that you're trying to protect. And the way that works in practice in a browser is that you have a main process, the broker that you have at the top there, which provides an IPC service and various policy engines that allow you to mediate access between the various different components. And then you have different processes which deal with the part where you talk to your untrustworthy, where you get your untrustworthy content from the various places across the internet. And then because you've got a constrained way of having those different things talk to each other, you can avoid the problem of having all of these things in the same place on that diagram, right? Now that's all very complicated and probably not very interesting if you're not building a browser, but you can make use of this as well. So nearly all of my slides have chickens on them because I have chickens and I think chickens are great. And so here, chickens are our assets. These are the things that we care about. It's like the high privilege in the Venn diagram we saw earlier on, okay? And the fox is the thing that we're scared of, right? And that might be the combination of an unsafe language and untrustworthy input, or it might be something else, right? You're not writing a browser. Maybe you don't need to worry about some of the browser things. Maybe the thing you need to worry about is third-party libraries that you don't know much about the security of. Maybe it is a legacy system without any access controls in. How can you make sure that you protect the things you care about from the things that might be dangerous to you? Well, it's simple. You don't mix your threats and your assets. You make sure that they're separated. And once they're separated, then you figure out what safe interactions between them might look like, and you provide a way of mediating that. And that might mean different things depending on the scale of the system that you're looking at. It might be that you need to think about the components of your system and provide logical separation so that you can have a logical boundary where a security boundary that you need to maintain is, so that you've got good ways of thinking about the interactions. It might be if stuff's running within the same application on the same machine that you need to think about multi-process stuff. It might be that you're thinking about different security boundaries within technologies in a different way. But the point is, don't mix your threats and your assets. So lesson 2. And then the third one is around how you can make hard things happen when people don't want to do them. So if sandboxing is the biggest innovation in browser security and browser history, I think the second is the use of safe systems languages. So I mentioned earlier on, Mozilla didn't have the luxury of just sandboxing everything, so they tried to make things safe even outside of a sandbox. And one of the things that came out of that effort was Mozilla Research picked up the Rust project and sponsored that for a while. So if you use Rust today, that's a Mozilla thing. It's a huge security improvement, and it's something that a lot of us benefit from today. But believe it or not, it didn't land in Firefox for security reasons. To explain what's happening here, there's a picture of a Firefox engineer standing by a sign in the San Francisco office. If you can't read what it says you must be this tall to write multi-threaded code. Okay. And so the thing that caused Rust code to be merged into Firefox was that around the time of Firefox 50 or so, we realized that one of the reasons that people were perceiving Firefox as being slower than it was because of some input latency problems and because of layout speed, right? Now, at the time, Mozilla had an experimental browser project that was written in Rust called Stylo, which had a really, really fast layout engine. And it was really, really fast because it was aggressively parallel, okay? And so people started thinking, well, how can we get the benefit of parallel layout within the style engine within Firefox? People tried a few things with the existing stuff, very, very quickly found what that sign's telling you about. Writing multi-threaded code in C and C++ is really, really hard. And the more aggressive you are in performance and the more aggressive you are in parallelization, the more quickly it's going to go wrong. And so what they did was they thought, well, actually, maybe we can use Stylo, introduce the bits of machinery that will allow us to have these Rust components within the browser. And that is actually how Firefox ended up using Rust code. And there's actually a few blog posts on Mozilla Hacks from around that time that talk about that and the impact of it and the security benefits that came from it. Because essentially what happened here was they replaced a bunch of browser code to make it faster, and it made it more secure, and that's great. Okay, and the lesson here is not rewrite everything in Rust. That's probably a bad idea, depending on what you're doing. It might be a good idea to not start writing things in C++, but probably all of you know that already. It's actually a subtly different thing. It's about looking for aligned incentives. Because you see, very often as engineers will hear our colleagues talking about things that aren't ideal, and maybe they'll be complaining about something that they deem really important that management don't understand. And this sometimes surprises me because, particularly for people in senior roles, a lot of engineering is actually about communication. And it begs the question, if this thing that we care about is so important, why isn't it understood? Because it's our job to make that thing understood. Now, maybe the thing that people are complaining about is something like technical debt or tooling not working particularly well. And good tooling is great, right? And paying off technical debt's good as well. But none of these things are sort of good in their own right. They have to have reasons to be a thing that you want to work on. And this is an example of this sort of thing, right? There was a need to improve security within the product, and there was lots of work going on to do that thing. But one of the biggest pieces of improvement came from spotting an opportunity in other people's priorities and working with them to make sure that that thing happened, right? And so, because of that sort of thing, I think it's really important for people working in senior roles in engineering to learn the lesson of how important it is to get other people to do as much of your work for you as possible. Okay, other ways to get safety. Remember the rule of two that we had. There are also lots of opportunities to take your things that are unsafe and make them more safe. Who's used WebAssembly here? Yeah. There's a piece of work that went on for a while when I was working on Firefox, on a thing called RLBox, which allowed you to take something that was dangerous, like maybe a media codec or something where maybe Crashstats said it was crashing a bit more often than it needed to. And if the performance wasn't critical, then you had the option of rebuilding the thing to run within the WASM runtime in the browser, and you'd get safety from it that way. This one made me laugh because a while back there was a really nasty security vulnerability in libwebp, right? And this was a couple of years ago now. And there's lots of panic where everybody had to go off and update their browsers, and everything that was running Electron, and lots of pages in the security press about it. And I remember noticing just after I updated my copy of Firefox to patch it against that problem, that actually one of the examples on Mozilla Hacks for using WebAssembly, look at the bottom there, was if you build WebP using the WASM compiler, you can protect yourself using that, and they didn't do it, and that made me laugh. So there we go, that's really all I wanted to talk about. The first lesson is around thinking about your boundaries, not just what they are. I mean, it's important that they work, but where you put them is just as important. The next lesson is how incremental changes can add up over time. Firefox and Chrome started out with very different security architectures. Now they're now very similar, and both of them have learned from each other, and I think that's interesting and tells us something. Another, sort of incidentally, is that language choice matters. Make sure you're choosing good tools for the job that you're doing. Look for aligned incentives. Try and find opportunities in the priorities of other people. And finally, it's possible to fix big problems. We started out with this horror story where people were thinking about the security implications of allowing programs to interact with websites before they had any security mechanisms. And now you can use your browser for anything that you want to with a reasonable degree of confidence. So that's all I had to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. You didn't mention the snow. I thought you were going to go for it.
Should you want me to talk about the snow?
Let's have a quick, let's tell them the history of the snow.
Would you want?
So,
It's going to be
so
two-part
here we
story.
go. Just hold on to your seats, everyone. You're in for
A long, long time ago.
Every time Mark has been here, well, apart from the first time, Mark, it snows. So I don't know if you all saw the absolute blizzard that happened outside. And just so you know, we have checked and it hasn't set, and I'm sure everyone's going to be saying coming home. But it's the everywhere you go. Always here he's brought the snow, and we did say, I bet it's going to snow. Sorry for singing. I bet I've had 2 beers. I've had 2 beers, so I'm a bit tired, but it was good.
Yeah. So last time, do you remember Beast from the East? Do you remember that? The really, really bad storm in 2018. I came with, was it robots? Was that the robots
Yes.
one? I came with robots for reasons, and I got here and I did my talk, only to discover I couldn't get home again, so I had to crash with a friend in Rubery. Anyway, so just before I stood up, I looked out the window and like the snow's coming down on me.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know how people got home that night. I'll be honest with you.
Well, I didn't.
But I presume, I mean, we'll never know. We will never know. But 80 people turned up for our AI night with Microsoft, and yeah, hopefully they all got home. And that was in 2016. So we're going to do one quick question for Mark. Have you left your socials up?
Yeah.
Anything else? We're going to redirect on his socials. So it's kind of the first hand that shoots if anyone's got a question. I've got my glasses on as well, so I can see this time. Sharp vision. No? Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. Round of applause for Mark. We are going to head to a. Oh, we'll have that dongle. Yes, please. We are going to head to a quick break soon. We have one person that I want to introduce to you all. I'm so excited that we've got her here. So I first saw her speak at TechMids, and it was incredible. Technically, I don't know if you should have been my rival at some point. So I'm really excited to introduce Kirsty Thomas Brown. So massive round of applause, please. So while we just do a quick setup, I bet loads of people already know Kirsty. Have you? Who's? Yeah. Yay! Oh, yay! And now she's here at Fusion, so we're absolutely buzzing to have her here. I'm just going to leave that on this bit. I just need to put that on. Yeah.
Is that going to stretch?
Yeah, we should be okay. And then following this, we are going to go for a super quick break, toilet break, drinks. I believe there's probably still some food outside as well. So please feel free to help yourselves if you can manage a second pie. I don't like that feels really. Can people have a second pie? I mean, some people have done some pretty impressive eating at Fusion before, so I would not put it past you. 2 seconds. Oh, I need a dongle. You'll have to.
Can I put it on here? That might be more helpful. Yeah.
Yes. I think we're good. I think we're good. Yeah, we're okay. We're good. Proceed. Proceed. And then.
Oh no! Don't look, everybody.
Don't look. Close your eyes.
Oh no, we're good.
Okay. Awesome.
Oh,
Right
I
then,
don't-
everyone, over to.
Oh.
You need me.
How do I
Kirsty.
move that? Pardon?
Pardon? What? The stream. Yeah.
I'm sorry. What?
No, still don't understand. And I've got my glasses on. I'm lip reading. I'm listening. Nothing's going in. It's past 7 p.m. It's a struggle. I'm not going to lie. Didn't sleep well last night. Blame it on the 4-year-old.
I already did. I didn't close it.
Did you present?
Yep, it's on there.
As in for the stream?
This is a really quick one. It's only like 10 minutes.
Where's StreamYard?
Is that on it?
I can't see it.
That's
Well, do you have a tab open with the StreamYard thing?
Oh god, let me close. I'm scared Slack's going to open.
They're not on the screen, right?
Okay, that's fine. That's it.
I can't see the StreamYard thing.
How do I close this now? Is that?
Yeah, no, where's your Chrome?
That was it. I can press it. It's there.
But where? I'm so confused. There should be a StreamYard thing open somewhere.
There was. Should I close it and try again?
Yeah.
That's not going to share, right?
I think okay. Do you have?
I don't have. I don't.
Do we need the stream?
Give me a
I
sec.
don't need the stream.
Found it.
Found it.
Okay, 2
That's my
seconds.
click along.
I'll get back to it in a sec.
Everyone's
I'm glad that everyone's talking. If everyone's like stayed silent the whole time when we were trying to do this, it'd be
that
more
would be
fun.
really good. And how do I click?
I could back to. Where's your clicker?
I don't have one.
Oh, as in where's your click on the screen? Okay, if you move the mouse over to that one and click,
Just
The
click the
mouse.
mouse.
that should work.
I think so.
Yeah.
Is this
Let's
working?
try it and get back again.
I don't know how to go back.
As in like.
Oh,
There you go.
oh so I just press
Sorry,
the
it
arrows.
links the infusion thing.
That's okay.
Yeah, you should
I
be able
can,
to do arrows.
okay, that's much better.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Oh God, Hannah, yours has gone to sleep. Could you
Mine's
run?
done sleep.
You are going to be absolutely great.
Cool. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Kirsty. Yes.
Thank you for bearing with me there. Probably my fault, but we're going to blame something else. We'll blame Hannah. So, hi everybody. If we've met before, hi. Hi again, I guess. You've probably seen me do talks, as Hannah's mentioned. I used to do a lot of talks around DE&I, which is something I'm super passionate about. But don't worry, this one kind of spoiled it. That's what the talk's about. But I'm really excited because we're launching something new at Fusion now, ready for 2025, which is a very brand new segment that we cleverly named Infusion. Hey! Big cheers, please. Just force it. There we go. That'll do it. Woo! So this is basically the first talk in that. So it's what we're planning on doing is exploring technology that's having a real positive impact on society. So I'm here tonight to share the incredible work being done at the organization that I work for and how our tech is transforming lives every single day. So a quick intro. I'm a senior pathway coach, which is another way to say caseworker at Beam. So quick backstory. I'll get to it. Beam was founded in 2017 by Alex Stephanie. The idea came about in a really serendipitous way. So Alex befriended a homeless man at his local tube station. over the months, as he was traveling every day, he would bring him coffees, and then when it started to get cold, thermal socks. But then one day the man disappeared. And when he returned, finally, after a few weeks, Alex learned that he'd actually suffered a heart attack. And that moment really stuck with him. He really couldn't shake the feeling, and he thought there has to be a better way to help people like him, rather than coffees and socks. So the idea simmered, and he began to wonder, could tech be used to transform the way we support the most vulnerable people in society? And then from that came Beam. So Beam is a social enterprise employing caseworkers to support those who are in vulnerable groups. And we do it powered by technology. We've built a service function that uses a combination of people and AI to deliver really personalized, high quality support to people in need. And through these services, we've directly supported over 5,000 people so far, empowering them and supporting a large number of them into jobs and homes, which is pretty cool, right? You have to agree with that, really. Thank you. So you might be thinking, well, this is cool, but I thought this was about AI, and it is. So ultimately, Beam is a tech startup, and that makes it really difficult to explain to people when they ask me what I do. So it's not really what you'd expect, caseworker, tech startup. But at its core, Beam is powered by tech, and it's what allows us to create change at scale. And it's not just helping people in vulnerable groups, so people facing homelessness, asylum seekers, and refugees. It's about empowering the people on the front lines of the issue, social workers and support teams who work tirelessly to make a difference. So let's jump into the tech part. So our main tools are Vue on the front end, Ruby on the back end, and LLMs everywhere. Let me start with Beamforce. Internal case management, custom case management system. This is really the backbone of everything that we do at Beam. All of our member information's on there, our files, our messages, and everything that we need to do our jobs. We have a great co-pilot system that we lovingly named Kara. So picture this, instead of spending ages searching through files and reports and emails to find that one piece of information that you need, Kara is ready to answer any questions that we might have. It pulls context about our members and presents answers or insights instantly, which saves time and frustration. This feature replaces traditional search with an AI-driven response. And it's a simple change, but it's one that's had a huge impact on efficiency and ease of use for caseworkers. And a feature that has truly, truly saved my sanity. If you're anything like me, you have major email anxiety. So I will reread an email 15 times. I don't know what I think I'm going to have accidentally written in that email, or accidentally attached a photo of myself from Halloween 2021. Not speaking from experience here, guys. Don't know where that came from. But this is where our draft messaging feature comes in. As caseworkers, we don't always have the time to carefully craft every message, and the people we're speaking to may require different forms of communication. So with this, we just simply jot down bullet points of what we want to say, and the AI takes care of the rest. It generates clear professional templates for communication, and it even adapts to the context of previous messages, so it feels natural and personalized. It's honestly a game changer. It's faster, it's consistent, and it's cut down on unnecessary admin time and me panicking, rereading everything 15 times. And then one of my favorite tools, the meeting transcription system. So when I meet with Beam members, our sessions often last between 45 minutes to an hour. And during that time, I think the most important thing is being fully present. I want to focus on the person in front of me, on their story, and the challenges that they're facing and their hopes, not typing away on another screen while they're speaking to me. So here's how we solve that. A system pulls a recording of the meeting, converts it to an MP4 using our speech-to-text model, it transcribes the audio, and then the LLM generates a text summary. Our AI steps in, creates detailed structured summaries, and pulls out all the key points of what we're speaking. So then when we ask Kara, what did that person say later, she can pull that out for us. So why does this matter? It saves 4.5 hours per week per caseworker. Across a team of 76, that's 342 hours saved every week, or the equivalent of 42.75 working days, which is approximately how long it takes me to finish one piece of admin. It ensures consistent, thorough documentation. It doesn't miss critical details. But the most important thing, it allows us to focus on empathy and connection when we're in these meetings. Sometimes we're speaking to people who are sharing things that are deeply personal and difficult, and they deserve our full attention. So that's great for us at Beam, but then we looked outwards. Pressure on councils and authorities is mounting. We have an increasingly aged population, and housing is becoming more and more unaffordable. And for those who want to help, they're finding that that comes at the cost of their mental health and well-being. There was a spike of social workers leaving their roles in 2020 that has continued. And for those who need the services, there's a staff shortage, and where there actually do have staff, the retention's low. So for the service users, having to change caseworkers constantly, it's just not the experience they need, and they often disengage from these support services. So we wanted to change things, but we couldn't offer them our internal case systems. So enter Magic Notes, one of the most exciting tools that we've developed. So like Beamforce, Magic Notes automates the creation of case notes. The process is mostly the same as Beamforce, but with a few tweaks. So it's, again, audio to text transcription, conversations recorded, sent to a speech to text system, which converts them into written text. And then we process the transcript, which then creates structured, customizable summaries. And we also use LLMs to label the speakers, predict meeting templates, and refine those summaries. Magic Notes users are able to create templates according to the kind of meetings that they conduct most commonly. So for example, at Beam, when we have an initial meeting with someone, we call it a PMP, or a past and present. So Beam caseworkers who use Magic Notes has a PMP template automatically set up. So in one of our pilots, Magic Notes reduced admin time by 48%. Caseworkers reported it saved them time, it cleared their admin backlogs, enhanced productivity, and helped them capture critical details that might have otherwise missed. But one of the challenges we faced early on was making sense of who said what in our transcripts. Imagine reading a 10-page document where all the voices are blurred together, and that's essentially what we were dealing with. Initially, we tried a few different speech-to-text models, but we ran into two big problems. The transcripts took too long to process, and there were huge speaker diarization errors. So we worked closely with our users, trialed and error a few things, were able to flag every mistake, make tweaks, which enabled us to find and deploy a perfect speech-to-text model. And the results were an 80% reduction in diarization errors, a massive improvement in speed, with transcripts now taking 5 minutes instead of 20. And so this all sounds cool, but to really demonstrate the impact, here's a case study. Social workers from Swindon Borough Council tried Magic Notes across 184 frontline meetings using 2 bespoke templates that we developed for them. They evaluated the pilot with a focus on the time they would save, and then they surveyed the people using it. And what we found was pretty impressive. Admin time was reduced by 63%, which meant that Care Act and mental capacity assessments were submitted and signed off earlier. Users reported an increase in the accuracy and the quality of their work, and they no longer needed to rely on their memory. Rapid topic changes no longer meant that something got lost, and nobody needed to repeat questions. 100% of practitioners who took part wanted to keep using Magic Notes. They stated that their mental health improved from the lifting the pressure of admin burdens, and they were able to focus on the work that they signed up for. Another finding was the benefits for the users of Magic Notes on a personal level. Those with protected characteristics such as anxiety, ADHD, visual impairment, and for whom English was not their first language, reported that they now felt more confident with their work. So it's already transforming the way that social workers work, but there's so much more we can do. The possibilities really are endless, and here are some of the ideas that we're exploring. So fine-tuning our AI models to make them more specific to the needs of caseworkers, retrieval augmented generation, so allowing the AI to pull precise, relevant information from the database in real time, using embeddings for smaller, more focused requests, making interactions with the system more faster and more efficient, and letting the AI programmatically fill in forms or generate reports for caseworkers. And honestly, there's probably a ton of things that we haven't even thought of yet. Of course, with great power comes great responsibility and challenges. So we're constantly working to make sure that this tech is ethical, secure, and accurate. So member information is sacred to us. None of it is shared or used for AI training. Everything stays internal and secure in line with GDPR and all other regulations. Keeping our data secure isn't a checkbox, it's an absolute non-negotiable. So from encryption to internal safeguards, it's a top priority. And AI is powerful, but it's nowhere near perfect. We always keep a human in the loop to ensure accuracy and guard against those infamous AI hallucinations. And as usage grows, we need to ensure the system remains fast, reliable, and efficient. And different regions, of course, have different laws for data storage, so we're always exploring ways to comply with those while maintaining that seamless experience. So despite me talking about AI and how we're using it, I just want to be clear on something. This technology is not here to replace human interaction, it's here to enhance it. At Beam, we're committed to keeping the focus on people, and this tech is just a tool that allows us to be more present and more empathetic and effective in our roles. And we think that it's working. In fact, one of the most telling signs of our success is the feedback we receive. It's never about how cool the Magic Notes is or how cutting edge technology is. It's about casework. And we're able to do that because we don't have to be staring up at another screen. We do what we do best. We empower the people we work with. We make them feel confident, supported, and like nothing's impossible, which at the end of the day is what it's all about. Magic Notes and the other tools we're building aren't just helping caseworkers, we're giving them back time, reducing burnout, and like I said, focusing on that human connection. Also, we're hiring. Thank you. Put it right back there.
Thank you. Thanks, Kirsty. That was so cool. That was so cool. So you've heard it here first. Kirsty is joining the Fusion team. Hooray! 2025 will look a lot different. We'll still have our standard events, but we're also going to have our in-Fusion events. So you'll hear more about that soon. We have got Jamie from Elastic next. We're going to have a really super quick break. So toilet, food, drinks, whatever you need. And then we're going to go straight to Jamie. No.
Should be same as last time. I don't know what was happening last time, but I unplugged the HDMI and plugged it back in.
And then
again,
it was
and
like,
worked.
yeah, I know, it was really weird.
Do you want me to just be up here when we kick off again?
If you
And
don't
then I'll
mind.
run back once we're
Yeah.
up and running.
I did not.
Did I keep the lectern on?
I did not sleep. Is the lecture mic on?
Yeah, I'm
It's
just
okay.
wondering if I'm going to be really loud and everyone's just...
Everyone can hear it. I
It's a
didn't
good to me.
literally like Ruben woke up like 3 times last night, and I'm like, what again? What do I need to do? And like, this is not my thing. So that's cursed.
We need to have our catch-ups.
I know we do. I said to Maria at Tech Kids, I was like,
Yeah.
we need to get dog sitters and child sitters and arrange them at the same time, just so we can be
I'm going to
together.
have a meeting with kids and dogs.
Maria said that, and I was like, oh.
Find a nice kids and dog friendly club.
She was like, yeah, but you can just stick them in the garden. I was like, oh, my kids would be like, mummy. And I'd be like, just let me talk.
It's fine, Otis can just play with the kids.
Oh, woo!
Oh, we're just sharing the Discord.
Yeah, sharing it, yeah.
Did I say anything weird?
No, it was all about limiting Q&As.
Oh, that's
So
good.
anyway, so what I need to do is, how do I get onto? I've got to go back onto Discord. Yeah.
Do you still have the tab open or no?
No, I just closed it down because I feared.
Aaron, if you can hear me, can you mute the lectern mic? No, no mic.
Okay, so. Oh!
Did you see my Photoshop?
I know, yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
That was actually familiar today. I wasn't feeling very productive apart from that.
So good. Okay, here we go. Oh no,
That's
that's YouTube.
That one.
StreamYard.
Oh, it's not like that.
I'm not plugged in. Okay. Oh, you just go because you know. Oh, oh.
Hello.
Oh, this is so weird.
Studio. Well, backstage. So it's just that one.
That one.
So if you plug it in and then do that full screen, it should work. Should we just set it up now?
Now
So we
and
don't have
then,
to worry about it?
yeah. That sounds good. Me.
Oh, by the way, you know the whole echo thing?
Yeah.
So the problem is, we can only take audio from one place at a time.
Yeah.
If we try and have audio from whoever's speaking on the screen and from you at the same time, that's when the thing happens.
So where should I
basically,
go?
I was at the back, and then while like, you know, there were questions, answers, and talking and whatever, I was there like... trying to juggle between who the fuck was talking, and then near the end, you were both talking at the same time. And I was just there like, fucking DJing the most. Like, try and keep it more kind of, you know.
Like,
Have you not scripted your conversation?
absolutely not. Have I scripted
No
anything?
talking over each other.
No.
You'll give me a part.
Okay, cool. Oh, look, this is paused anyway. Here we go.
That should be good now,
Okay, bro.
I think. Yeah, I should be able to get audio from
Okay.
that.
Awesome. So, Jamie and then Sil.
Yes.
Cool. I think I'm going to get started.
Can everyone come back, please? This is so weird. There's like a delay on the thing, isn't there? It's weird. Weird. We are ready for part 2. I'm gonna, yeah. This will just go. You can go to your go to your little AV cave. I said that on the thing. Yeah, go to your AV cave. Hi, welcome back to part 2. This screen is so distracting. How many people have tried to to work out how long the delay is? Hey, oh, that's cute. That's good. Like it. All the hands in the air. I'm going to take a photo. Sorry, everyone, just before we get Jamie in. If you want to put your hands in the air to check out the delay, that's cool. Ready? Yay! Oh, welcome back, you guys. So great to have you here. Okay, cool. So we're gonna go straight into Jamie. So he's ready, hopefully. Can you shut up, please? With love. Thank you. Where did that come from? Oh, stop it. Whoever's doing it, stop that. Although I am here for it, I really love it. Okay, so Jamie's waiting. So Jamie Tanner is a senior software engineer at Elastic. He's going to be speaking about quantifying resilience on open source software. I am no longer in charge of any tech. You'll be pleased to know. So I'm going to sit. Love it. It's just no filter in this audience tonight. So I'm going to leave it to the guys to bring Jamie up.
Hello.
Yay! Hi, Jamie.
Hey.
Hey! Awesome.
Thank you very much. Cool. So hopefully my slide should be shown in a second. Perfect. There we go. Cool. So yes, hi. I'm Jamie Tanner, and today I'm going to be talking to you about quantifying your reliance on open source software with dependency management data. One thing you'll learn about me is I'm not very concise. So both the talk title and the projects that we're going to be hearing about is not named in the best way, but whatever. So who am I? As mentioned, my name's Jamie Tanner. My pronouns are he, him. I may be more often known by my URL, which is jbt.me. I am a very active blogger. I'm a member of the indie web community and like to own my data and my identity, which means instead of linking out to one of the social networks, I'll give you a link to my elsewhere page, which links out to all of the social networks I'm on, including my website itself, which you can follow on things like ActivityPub through the Fediverse and through things like Blue Sky as well. Over the last few years, I've been very much tending towards working in engineering productivity, both trying to improve like my own ability to deliver quicker, but also others. And so just over a year ago, I joined Elastic, where I'm officially doing engineering productivity, and I'm absolutely loving it because it's actually the role that I've been wanting to do for most of my career. I was previously at Deliveroo. This isn't like a, ex-Deliveroo, ex-Google in bio sort of thing. The reason I'm saying that is it will become apparent in a little bit that I used to work at Deliveroo. Just started hearing my dog barking in the background, so sorry if anyone can hear that in the background. Hopefully she'll chill in a second. So a quick timeline of events. Obviously, this talk is right now. And actually, just before I go into this, you will see in the top right-hand corner of the slides, there should be a link to dmd.tanner.dev and my elsewhere page, slightly obscured by the Fusion logo. So if you want to get any of the links, they're there. So today is this talk. Just over a year ago, I gave a similar talk at TechMids. For anyone who was there, please try and do a spot the difference and tell me how many differences you can detect. But there's been a number of changes since then in the project and things that I've learned. The first public talk was in July of last year. The project itself, the Dependency Management Data project, was created in February last year. But you have to rewind another year to go back to the August, where the first iteration of the project kind of began with Dependabot. But then actually, if you rewind again to 2019, this was the first time that I was actually thinking about how much do we use open source and how can we understand that better in a more programmatic way than just, yeah, we probably use a lot of it. And then in 2017, there were some very, very early versions of this that were using just like hacky scripts. And so the reason I want to bring this up is like over the last 7 years, I've been spending a lot of time trying to think about this. But it's only in the last couple of years that I've actually had the tooling and some of the experience and know-how to actually make some of these insights more useful and more appropriate. So why is it important to understand how your organization, whether that's a company or open source usage, uses open source and some of the interesting things you can get out? So as I mentioned, I blog a lot, and this is the post from 2019 where I first started formally thinking about it. I would love to like directly quote the first couple of paragraphs. I've just heard that you are losing me a little bit. I'll try and carry on. Oh, cool. Thank you. So I would love to just like directly quote this blog post, but that's not what people come to a talk for. To summarize, like in recent years, it's become unavoidable to build on top of open source. In like the last 10 years, especially, but even before, there was a lot of open source. And that is absolutely a great thing because it allows you as an organization to reduce your focus on domain specialization to just the things that are actually the value add for your company. You shouldn't have to know about dozens of different things just to ship the product that actually matters for your domain and what you're trying to solve. And in a selfish way, it allows you to pick up on things like defects and feature delivery that you don't have to pay for. So When did you last hear me? Okay. So to recap what you just missed. So I would love to just read out the blog post because I've summarized it really well at the beginning. But one of the key things is that in recent years, it's become unavoidable to build software on top of open source software. This is absolutely a great thing because it allows you and your organization to reduce your focus on domain specialization to just the things that your organization actually needs to focus on, and allows you to do things like pick up on defects and get other people to deliver features for the things that you actually need without you having to do the work. So it's a load of free labor, but it's also really good for all the other reasons. But one of the problems is that it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Because as you've probably seen, the Nebraska problem, this is a very regularly shown XKCD in recent years, is that it's not always smooth sailing because you don't know the impact of a single library in your dependency tree that could be holding the whole house of cards up. This has happened so many times that I could probably spend several days talking through or just listing all the different cases of this. But most commonly, there were things like Log4Shell, where loads of organizations realized just how much the Log4j library was deployed, to the point that someone was finding out that their wireless smart plug had Log4j on it and was vulnerable. And they were like, why is this a thing? We've also had cases where there are maintainers who've maliciously changed their code bases to perform protestware based on political events. And for instance, there was a library that was used by the Chef configuration management tool that the author in political protest pulled the library from GitHub. And that then broke builds from around the world until GitHub actually intervened. The other thing that is really nice about understanding your supply chain is you can go and say thank you to the people who are doing so many hours of unpaid work for you. Because open source communities and projects and the maintainers need your support, love, and positive feedback. And if the only thing you take away is this, please go and say thank you to one of the maintainers that maintains a piece of software you have. Hopefully you have some other takeaways, but this is really the big one. And so, do you really fully appreciate the depth of your dependency on the software supply chain? Guarantee the answer is no. And even someone like me who's doing a lot of this stuff, we still don't have full understanding of just how bad it could be. As well, being able to understand how your business uses open source is really important for a few other things. So, as I mentioned, I'm at Elastic. A few years ago, we migrated away from open source. How bad is that for you? There have been a number of other companies that have done it in the last few years. How bad could that be to your organization? Are you using libraries that you don't want, whether that's, for instance, a competitor or it's not recommended anymore internally, or it's got licenses that you're not super happy with? As someone in engineering productivity, it's really interesting to know how teams are using different libraries and frameworks so we can better provide tooling to support them. And you also have a load of stuff that is no longer maintained, whether explicitly or implicitly. There are dependencies that are deprecated, and you have a load of vulnerable stuff. And a lot of the time, most people just look at the vulnerable side of things and not it hasn't been updated in several years because the maintainer has burnt out because they weren't getting any nice feedback. And as well, you can ask a lot of these same questions for your internal software, because you will have cases where teams are using deprecated internal libraries that haven't been maintained in several years because the only person who knows the code base left, and now everyone's a bit stuffed. So you can also get some other interesting insights around your dependency tree, such as how maintained does it seem to be? Is there active maintenance for a really important library for your most critical path, you probably want to know that because you may want to help support them or replace it with something else. You can also get insights into things like the supply chain security practices through things like openness security scorecards, or insight into how many of your dependencies are actively seeking funding and what can you do to try and help them. So how can we actually work out the reliance on open source software? I mean, the first thing is we could throw a load of money to these vendors, but that's not what I'm here to talk to you about. I want us to look at using some open source. So dependency management data. I was thinking of the slides. I'm not sure if you can quite see it, but it's on my t-shirt. Like, I am that all in on this project. I've had a custom t-shirt made. Like, I'm all for it. I also have stickers if anyone's interested. So dependency management data, DMD. As I mentioned, I'm not great at naming, but whatever. So the project itself is kind of self-explanatory. So the underlying thing that you get out of it is an SQLite database. And this is important for several reasons. But the main thing is you do a load of data processing, you get a database, and then that database contains all sorts of amazing insights that you just need to data mine. There's a command line tool, DMD, which allows you to ingest data from different sources, augment that data, and then output that database. There's both a web application for human people and GraphQL API for not so human people. And you throw in an SQLite browser and integrations, and you're off to the races. So why SQLite? So aside from the fact that in recent years it's had a massive surge in popularity, the other one is it's super convenient to distribute and share. So when I first started working on this around August in 2022, I literally sent around the database over Slack messages to people. I was like, oh, I've grabbed the latest copy of the data, here you go. And that's so nice, especially when you're getting started with things like this. It's also really useful for building local-only apps or building applications on top of it, because you don't need to install Postgres with the right extensions and all the right versions. You literally just send someone the file and that's it. You can mount it into a Docker container, boom, you're done. And another key thing with the project is there's no lock-in. And I made it very like a key design decision to make sure that all the data is in the database. So once you've ingested everything, grabbed any external data, it is then all yours to do whatever else you want on top of it. As mentioned, the command line tool creates that database. It ingests different data sources for that dependency data. You can then enrich it with other data known as advisories and dependency health, which we'll dig into a little bit later. You can then actually add your own views on the data. So where you have things like, in our organization, we do not want to use this library because reasons. And then there are a number of like fairly trivial SQL queries that you may want to do that are packaged into reports that are both human and graphically visible in terms of making it easier to get some starting points. The web app itself is really good when it's centrally deployed and accessible. You can view the reports that are available in the command line, also in the web. And there are a couple of different SQLite browsers that are really nice for giving you visualization and allowing you to query stuff. In fact, a third option, just to like really throw the options at you. As mentioned, there's also a GraphQL API built into it. One of the nice things is if you deploy this at your organization in a place that it is accessible behind authentication to, for instance, all your colleagues, you can now send a URL with a pre-written query. So instead of saying, hey, can you go to this page and then write this query, you can just send someone a URL and everything gets pre-filled. As mentioned, there's also a GraphQL API for machine-to-machine and integrations with other means. So how did it come to be? So I kind of talked about this, but this is from 2019, where one of my colleagues at Capital One was working on a side project, mainly to work out like which dependencies we were using and where we needed to upgrade things. And just as they had finished the final touches for it, we started using a product called Mend Renovate, which does that like a bajillion times better. And so we're like, well, we've just spent all this time trying to do some interesting stuff. How can we like reuse it? And so I suggested looking at using the dependency data to actually understand how we can distribute support, generally financial, to our dependencies. And naturally wrote a blog post about it. But before that, there was also some interesting stuff we could look at around usage of internal versions of things like Spring Boot or internal libraries that were quite key to make sure they were up to date. So this then came up to 2022, just before Hacktoberfest, while I was at Deliveroo. And I wanted to get a load more folks involved in giving back to open source. One of the biggest questions you get with that is, okay, well, what should I contribute to? And so I was like, okay. Deliveroo is a data-driven company, so I wanted to get some data to actually help inform that decision. So we'd recently rolled out GitHub Advanced Security, which gave us access to Dependabots APIs. And so we started using that data. It was a good starting point, but it missed out on a lot of data for ecosystems like Scala, which we're fairly heavy users of. And it didn't give us like exact versions, but it was good enough to start with, especially for this use case. But one thing I found was it wasn't a one-trick pony, because we were actually able to start finding a few more use cases that gave some really interesting insights into stuff that we just didn't have answers to before. Similarly, we also rolled out Mend Renovate at Deliveroo, and as part of this, I realized that there's a load of data that it had under the hood. So because it can manage dependencies, for instance, for Scala, it also has data for, here are all the updates I found. And so I was like, ooh, this is interesting. I also discovered a project called endoflife.date, which gives you insight into things like, is the version of Python I'm using out of date, or approaching end of life or end of life. And while I was starting to do this, I realized, you know what, I need to make this an actual project. I don't want it to be an internal thing to Deliveroo, because I want it to be this open source thing that I'm pretty sure I'm going to spend like evenings and weekends working on, and I still am. And I wanted to be able to use it wherever I went, because it was unlikely I was going to be at Deliveroo for the rest of my career. And I wanted to do it. So started it as its own project. So quick recap. How does it work? So you run a tool, for instance, something like Renovate Graph, which uses Renovate as the underlying data source to grab what data is in your repo. Then you set up the database by initializing it. You import that data, and then you can stop there. So once you have that data, you can then start querying it, and you can honestly get some really interesting data just with that. But I would then recommend adding some additional stuff. So using advisories for things like, where are we using end-of-life stuff? What's vulnerable to security issues? Or alternatively, if you are using software bill of materials, which in a lot of places is starting to become requirements, you can also pull those in as an additional data source. And again, start doing different things. When you're importing, it will grab that and put it into an underlying data model that can then be queried via SQL. I don't know how much everyone enjoys SQL. I've started writing a lot more, and yeah, it's different, but you can do some really interesting things with it. So, for instance, you can ask things like, which repos are using a vulnerable version of Log4j? How many repos are using an older version of the Datadog SDK? Or what are our most used? direct or transitive dependencies. As mentioned, there are these things called advisories. So because right now you can ask things like, what modules and versions are people using? Or which teams are using the Gym Run framework? That's okay, but what if you could ask things like, are any of our projects relying on things that are no longer recommended by, for instance, our Go team internally? Or how much time should my teams be planning to upgrade AWS infrastructure in the upcoming months? So to do that, you need more data, and this is where advisories come in. So you can pull in data from end-of-life.date, depths.dev, and ecosystems, which provide a wealth of publicly available and unauthenticated access to some really interesting data points. As well as that, there's also a project I've written to grab things like end-of-life data for AWS infrastructure. But one of the things is you probably don't want to share a lot of this externally, because you may have internally specified things. So one of the things you can do is use the custom advisories table to write your own advisories. For instance, for internal libraries that naturally the internet isn't going to know is deprecated, but you internally know. I'm not going to go into this in as much detail because I realize I'm running a little bit close. But one of the things we also support is the Open Policy Agent, which allows you to write really, not necessarily like really complex, but more powerful and more complex in expressiveness policies for things like actually matching direct versions. So just want to, so we're in the last section, and I want to go through some actual like real use cases. So here's an example of what the report advisories, of the advisories report shows as of like 10 minutes ago. And for instance, sorry, Joe, there is one of the Monzo repos, but I've also thrown in one of the Elastic repos just to make it fair. And these are the sorts of things that you get insight into. If you go to that URL, you will see a load of other stuff for a load of publicly accessible repos. One of the really interesting ones I see is, as a want to share, is a use case we had at Deliveroo where we have there's an internal deployment tool which allows you to have like a Kafka sidecar for consuming or producing data. And as part of this, we realized we had an incident because we had a number of teams who were using an out-of-date version of this Kafka sidecar, which was affected by a bug. And we needed to work out very quickly who else was affected because we were getting close to the dinner time rush and we needed to make sure that things were scaling correctly. If we didn't have dependency management data installed, producing data around the org, this would have been really hard because searching for YAML across multiple repos using GitHub search is painful. So effectively what we'd done was we had already pre-parsed the data and we had information around what is the current version of the Kafka sidecar across all these repos. We additionally had information around the business criticality tier of each of these repos. And so we could write this slightly garish but straightforwardish query to say, give me a list of all the repos that have a version that is affected by this bug, and also give me information around the business criticality tier and sort by that. So this then gave us this list where we could see, okay, the affected service is one of our tier 1 services, so we need to pay someone right now to get it fixed. And the also affected service, which unfortunately didn't have an owner at the time, we need to try and get to them sooner, or later, but still get that sorted. I'm not going to go through Log4Shell because there are many different ways that we can go through it. That is also an example of there are lots of different ways to do things with dependency management data. It provides lots of different options for how do I want to query the data. But in the 4 seconds I've got left within my time slot, this is really the getting started guide. It's grab some data from different means, for instance, using something like Renovate Graph, or you can use GitHub's built-in tooling to export a software bill of materials. You import that data into DMD, and then you can start running some really useful queries. And something I didn't call out earlier is this has honestly changed the way that I do things as an engineer, especially someone in engineering productivity, because I can now query across the organization who is using this thing, or how many teams have got outdated versions of this library. So yeah, I'm going to leave you with this slide. And I think we may have time for a question or two. Or you've lost my audio for the last 20 minutes.
Halfway through your talk, which was a bit realised or not. So here we go again. So I'm going to, can everyone contact Jamie on his socials, on his direct links, emails, any questions. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you.
No problem.
So before we introduce our next speaker, quick question. How are people finding out about Fusion? I know I'm asking a room of about 100 people, but are people finding out on Twitter? Hands up. No. Oh, no. No way. Kind of. Are people finding out on LinkedIn? How are you all finding out? Where's it coming from? The what? Blue sky. Blue sky. Who's that? Blue sky. So who puts it on Blue Sky? Oh,
Me!
Seriously, is that where it's coming from? Meetup. Okay, cool. We don't know where to post information for our events anymore because there's so many different channels and things that people are using. Is it beneficial that we send direct emails out to people to let you know when we're releasing tickets? Just put your hands in the air if that feels like a good idea. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thanks everyone. Sorry. Okay, cool. That'll be our new way of doing it because I know quite a few people missed out on tickets for this evening. So we'll make sure that we use that avenue as a start off. I feel like I'm behind on the times on Twitter. I need to get onto Blue Sky, don't I? What a loser. Another Fusion legend is here tonight. Da, 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 da. It's Stuart Langridge, who, yay! Has spoken before. Sorry, was that too much? Yeah, okay. Okay. So I'm going to hand over to our final speaker of this evening, Stuart Langridge.
Is this working? Yes. In the summer of 1843, you want timelines? I'll give you timelines. In the summer of 1843, Alfred Lord Tennyson published his second book of poems. And in it, he told the story of a mysterious woman, the Lady of Shalott. Why didn't that play the sound, James? Bear with me 1 second. but they're all actually just Safari's rendering engine. Where's my sound? So here's a slight
amazing. What a wonderful end to the evening. Thank you so much. We are going to skip questions because it's time for Cozy Club. So those that can come to the Cozy Club, we are going to head over soon. If you have any questions for Stuart, he will probably be at the Cozy Club. Of course you will. So he will be there. But I just want to say a huge thank you. Thank you for everyone for coming this evening. A massive, massive thank you to our sponsors. Again, if you see Jardu or Bluetail hiring involved in other community events, please go and talk to them, and because they are the ones that are funding and supporting this community. And this is a bit weird, but I'm going to say Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. No? Sorry. Thank you.